Excellent. So the next speaker for this session is Jean-Baptiste Hervé. I'm delighted to welcome them down from the University of Hertfordshire/France. We're kind of doubling up on interesting PhD students doing amazing work in video games. So please continue. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It seems to be working right now. Yeah. Okay. As Mike nicely put, so I'm Jean-Baptiste Hervé. I'm a former engine developer in the video game industry. I run several gigs such as Spiders, Crytek, so on. But now I'm a PhD student at the University of Hertfordshire, and I mainly write about like PCG, generative design, and as you can already guess, Minecraft. I assume everyone in the audience has a vague idea of what Minecraft is, right? Okay. So in parallel to all this cool research and video game development and so on, I'm co-organizing with an amazing team the GDMC, which stands for Generative Design in Minecraft competition. So it's simply a competition where, like every year, people from all around the world, students, hobbyists, and so on, write generators like small, tiny bits of software that are able to, for a given location on a Minecraft map, produce a village. So this can be like some sort of those small classic settlements, but yeah, some entries, like depending on the cultural background of the people creating those, might have like different look, or even like have this kind of more fantastic dystopian appearance. And so once people have written their code, they send it over to us, and then we generate the map, like a 2 or 3 map every year. We send them over then to actual human judges. Like judges in themselves, they have different specialty. We have like game designer, level designer, AI engineer, and so on. And so they are tasked to rate those different maps, and by doing so, we can like try to know which generator is performing better than the others. So if that's something that you're interested into for various reasons, you can find us at that website, or simply type GDMC in your favorite search engine. You will likely end up finding us. I also strongly advocate for you to join our Discord. Like our Discord community is amazing. Like they are the one like now developing the frameworks that we are using for the competition. Like it's a language agnostic framework. It's interacting in real time with the game. Also, like this screenshot is coming from one member of our community that is like building this tool that lets you like create generators for Minecraft without like writing any kind of code, which is like, it's very impressive. It's still under construction though, but that's coming from a community. And in general, if you have like interest in generative design and procedural generation, like come over, like it's a great place to talk. Yeah, I think I won't have time to display this, but what I wanted to talk about today is what is challenging about this competition. What is like the issue each generator has to face. So I would like to start with like the four criteria the judge has to judge about, basically, when rating the generator. So the first one is the kind of the most easy one in a way, is the functionality of the settlements, right? So by functionality, we say like goods and services that are provided by a village. Like, can you sleep in it? Do you have access to food, any commodity? This is both like in a more fantasy way, but also in a more like gameplay related approach. And this one is kind of easy because like even if some of those functions are hard to implement, like let's say you want to build a wall surrounding your settlements, that can be tricky, right? But in terms of to know what your settlement is able to do or not, is like kind of binary, right? Like, do my settlement provide food? Yes or no? There is no in-middle answer. Do my settlement provide any kind of protection against monsters and so on? Then we got aesthetic, and already we are in a more abstract landscape, so to speak, because like obviously it's very difficult as humans to agree on what is beautiful or not, but it is even more difficult to say to write an algorithm that is certain to produce something that is guaranteed to look good, right? Also, it comes with the nature of Minecraft, where everything is in low resolution, and also there is the idea of even if you have like a finite set of blocks that come with like their name and also what kind of object they are supposed to relate to, they are also very free to interpretation. And so, like we have seen use in the past of people like using blocks just for the look of it and not their actual function. So already this part of the challenge is already quite abstract and hard to judge. Then we have adaptivity. So this one I brought with me a good example. So adaptivity is how your settlement is integrating into the environment. So for instance, here we have this little town that is on the junction of two biomes, so desert and some kind of a valley/meadow. And so it tried to integrate nicely in the terrain in a lot of ways. So first of all, like it used like, it didn't bulldoze, it didn't like erase any hills or mountain or anything. Buildings that are built in the desert are using like local material. Also, the architecture they are using is related to the biome. You can do the same conclusion for those two other buildings. And if you look in the back here, there is like the road being turned into a bridge that is like crossing the river. Also, as you can see, there is a small volcano over here, and so buildings are being created far from the lava in order to not be set on fire, right? And all those tiny details are very obvious for us humans, but turning them into actual rules for the generators is something that is quite complicated. Like the fire thing, for instance, it's quite obvious for a human player, but it took like, I think, 2 or 3 years in the competition for people to actually probably avoid the lava. And also, it depends on the test, right? But you can see that the transition from one biome to another is not like very nuanced. It's very like brutal, and there is no gradual descent from one kind of architecture to another. So I think adaptivity is very interesting because there is a lot of good practice that we do very naturally as humans that are very hard to transcribe into a software. And finally, we have the narrative aspect of your settlement. By narrative, we say like the environmental narrative of it. So for instance, here we can like clearly guess that it's some sort of a sawmill because we have this trunk over here, we have this stack of planks nearby. Here, this looks like a farm or a barn of some sort. And so in this entry that I use as an example, there is actually a murder mystery happening in the village that is being generated alongside the village. So there is like different tiers of houses, and one of those houses contains the basement or the hideout of the murderer. And it's the top like pictures over there. Like you have this little hideout with like the name of the next target, and there is also already a cell in a jail ready to receive the murderer in case like the villagers ever figure out what they are like, who the murderer is. So a lot of different dimensions comes along with those settlements, and that's the task of the judge to see how well those dimensions are being handled by the generator. But also, like, there is an unofficial challenge. In a recent work that we published, we published a preprint, not a big deal. We tried to step back a bit from like the actual grading and to look into what the judges think about those settlements. What do they feel about it? And what else, like, we basically analyzed the written feedback they provided for different settlements. And what we found out is, like, for instance, one thing they care a lot about is variety. Variety among different, let's say, buildings, for instance. But there is like a huge trade-off within variety, right? They are, like, what we observe is judges are not like clearly focused on, okay, let's have as much different buildings tied together, but there is a need also for consistency for your settlements to be cohesive in a way, right? You don't want to have like a castle next to a skyscraper, next to, I don't know, a Star Wars cantina. And also they are not asking for variety, the same amount of variety for the same aspect of the settlements, right? Like interiors, if they all look the same, that's less of an issue than if all the buildings and the exteriors are being copy-pasted. And the same again, like they don't want all the buildings to be different. They want for, like, let's say each neighborhood to have like one landmark, one structure that stands out of the rest. Like for instance, a windmill, a watchtower, and so on. There is also a strong desire for evocation, like something they can rely on, understand, and can start connect to the settlements through. It could be like some sort of cultural evocation, like through the architectures and the style of the building. It could be like a history one. It could be a trope, like something coming out from, I don't know, a fantasy book or something. But they want to be able to understand what the settlement is about in order to, get involved in it. And so all those nitty-gritty different, like let's say micro evaluations that judges are doing, we tie them all together in a nice package, which is basically the suspension of disbelief. And when I say that, I don't say, oh, okay, in order to do the best generators for PCG ever, you just need to fix the suspension of disbelief issue, right? But it's just an indication of whenever we are producing something with AI for video games, we have to keep in mind, okay, if we want our player to engage with that, we have to make sure like they fully engage with it, like through different means. It could be like the narrative of it, the varieties, the evocation, and whatnot. Okay, so what's next? Because now our entries in the competition are getting better and better at targeting those different challenges, the official one and the untold one. Like for instance, the village, the town that you can see in the background of this slide has been generated, and alongside with the crops and the road coming along, and there is different towns being connected through roads, and there is like simulated events going on between like the relationships of the different towns. It's getting impressive. And so sometimes like us, the organizing team of this competition, we tend to ask ourselves, okay, now that we are getting better at addressing a lot of issues coming from like generating cities in Minecraft, what should be the next focus for our community? And I'm really excited to that because space in video game is such a large thing, and it's so cool, and it conveys so many different things. So I talked briefly about narrative earlier in this talk, and so, I mean, there is a narrative space in video games, right? We often refer to it as environmental storytelling, right? Like there is also a gameplay space in your video games. You refer to it as level design. And I mean, in our daily life, we have like plenty of space we interact with, right? We have like a nice space where we go to relax or just to appreciate the beauty of it. We have social space that we go to hang out with people. And I mean, even if it's not part of our competition right now, this is something that we have to think about when generating a game environment, right? Like if some of you play, like, let's say MMORPG, you know that different places in the game world can lead to different behavior. And also there's a way that as player, we interpret the space and we change the meaning of it, like the same way like skateboarders in streets locate spots, they can do tricks, even if that was not the first, that wasn't, sorry, the first intent with that kind of structure. And so there is so many different elements that we can incorporate in generative design in video games and also in our competition. But yeah, so we have all those layers, all those dimensions to address how we can do that. And to some, the answer might be more tech, like nowadays we can generate in a matter of minutes or seconds a highly, very complex image, like through Midjourney or DALL-E or whatnot. And what couldn't do the same with Minecraft Village, right? We could say, okay, build me a castle on top of a hill and blah, blah, blah. To that, I say, why not? But I have two counter-arguments to that. The first one is what we observed in the competition, all those very advanced AI techniques, like using deep learning and so on, they are struggling with the competition right now for a lot of technical reasons. But like when I say they are struggling, it's not that they are not winning the competition. It's more like they can't, like they struggle to produce one coherent building. The other problems that I have with solving all the issue coming with generative design just through tech is like, let's say, okay, I'm using a large language model into our competition to like try to solve a lot of issue and address like open up the field of possibilities regarding a lot of different dimensions. Maybe there is like a lot of, I will cover a lot of different aspects of settlements, but what about like the remaining ones, the things that are still untouched by my AI? I need to address those at some point if I want to make some progress. So how do I solve that? By even more tech, even more complex algorithm, even more work? Okay, but let's say I do that a second time. So there's still dimensions that are left out untouched or that could be improved and so on. Do I do the same work a third time? And we could go on and on and on and on, building more and more advanced tech. I think like we had like great presentation on that very specific topic this morning, like two of those. And I think like space, along with any dimension of a video game, should serve the design. And also, all those issues, like you can address them with design because us humans, we are very good with designing space. Like a good example is, let's see how London as a city has grown compared to the way we built San Francisco, right? And the way those cities differ also have a strong impact on how people live in this space and how they behave. The same with the way we move around natural space. Like there is a lot of those actions that we do in our daily life without ever realizing it, right? Like the way we move in a forest, or the way our own very, very real villages integrate into the environment. We don't like think a lot about how we do that, but we just do it. And like there's even like more intention in space that we do, so we put sometimes, right? Like in like the best example is theme park, right? Like theme park basically invented environmental storytelling, and like there is a lot of theory about like how to place your queue for like different attraction, or to create like the different neighborhood of your theme park. I mean, another like the more cursed side of this science is casino, right? Like you have all those rows of machines that are placed not at all in a random way, but in the opposite, like in a way that makes you lost in those space, with all your sensor being like stimulated by the noise and the flashing lights and so on. So to me, this competition is like still having a great future, right? There's a lot that can be improved. There's a lot that can be addressed. We can address this with tech. We can address this with more AI. But let's keep in mind also that there is a lot of knowledge out there and desire, things we want to express within space that can be integrated not by simple math, but also like a more design-based approach. That's it for my talk. If you have any questions, let's go for it. Otherwise, you can reach me through Twitter or by mail.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful talk. It's such a cool project. I've been one of the judges on this for quite a while now, and watching the change has been incredible. So I highly recommend going onto the website and seeing some of the work that people have created for this competition. Do we have any questions from the audience about this work? Come on around. Yeah, let's go this way.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's extremely interesting. I would like to ask you, do you think this could also apply to real-world spaces, for example, creating virtual assets pinned to actual real-world locations, for instance, through geolocation and augmented reality?
Yes, absolutely. Like there is a whole field of research that is basically generative architecture, right? Or generative urbanism. There is also like in real life urban projects that are maybe not led by AI, but like where architects and urbanists are working along with like algorithm, basically. Especially like you can predict like traffics or the way people will move around the space. Like there is science about how people behave in some different categories of street and so on. So it's totally possible. And it's interesting because like you could argue that you could reuse the exact same things for video games and vice versa, but since the embodiment is not the same, obviously like there is like difference in the way people behave in virtual spaces. Also, I mean, it's the case in particular in video games. You want to bring like as a video game creator, you want to bring like some intent you have some intent you want to bring into your level design, in the narratives that you want to convey and so on. So those two fields are very close, but they are not like copy-pasted, basically.
I think we've got a question here. Fantastic.
Great talk. And I'm curious, like, why is there there is a lot of like in the game design community, I've noticed, people are not open to deep learning models for like generative AI in general for design, but they're acceptable. They have in the past and they still do like accept procedural design. So what do you think like the future will be with deep learning models becoming so popular and powerful, and what is the role of the two?
That's a huge question, and I don't have all the answers to it. I think you have to keep in mind also when you look at who is interested in this tech, who are they, in which studios they are working, what is the scope of the studio, and also very important, what are their position into the studio, right? So it's always very, I mean, if you look at GDC talk about like generative system for level design in particular, I mean, yeah, as you say, people have been using those for like a decade at least. But there is a difference between like having a tool that you can put yourself and your creative vision into and having this as the main driver of your creation. And those kind of I mean, there's so many elements to what's happening right now. But like, yeah, what do you prefer between like having to write your set of rules on how the biome has to be structured one to another, or basically asking a black box, that has been built by stealing content from everywhere on the internet, how to like produce a level or anything, and you're not even sure, like you have like very little warranty that this will be tied to what you envisioned in the first place.
Thank you so much. I really recommend looking up the papers that JB has written on this topic. It is a fascinating area. Let's thank our speaker one last time.